How's it going, guys? Leniman here, and we are here to talk about one of probably the best superhero movies I have ever seen, Logan. And honestly, it was probably one of the most beautifully done movies I've ever seen. Don't mind the back, it's messy. But, oh my god, I had to write down so much because I picked up on so much, and oh my god, I love this movie. First and foremost, the R rating couldn't have been done more beautifully. Most of the time, like aside from Deadpool, but like most of the time when a movie is given an R rating, they go crazy stuff, or they only do like one thing, or whatever, to make sure it's R. Like they go crazy. Everything they did in that movie that was R related had a purpose. It made the movie feel real and made it make sense. You understood stuff better. Whereas some of the other Wolverine movies, he's hacking and slashing people, but they dumb down the gore. Like this was like, no, he's killing people. Like, come on. And just a lot of the stuff they did, it just made so much sense. First and foremost, I'm warning you, spoilers ahead, because I'm getting deep into this, okay? But there were so many things they did. Everything made sense. You understood why it was R-rated. It wasn't like, this is the only reason they made it R-rated. Like, oh, they got an R rating, they did all this crazy stuff. And the stuff they did was crazy, but it made sense. And first of all, that very first scene with Logan in the limo and him getting pummeled by those cholos. It was, honestly, I think it was one of the best scenes in the movie, and it defined the movie, because right away, it's supposed to hit you like, this isn't the Wolverine we know. He's old, he's broken, he can't even get his claws all the way out. And the only way he ends up killing them is when he gets into a fit of rage, and he just starts hacking and slashing. It's not like, he's a hack and slash guy, but it was more, he had more, back in his day, he had more power behind his throws, and he had military training, so you could see why his attacks had purpose, not just rage, although a lot of times it was. And it was just very interesting to see like this guy who can take down these military trained guys with ease, like back in his heyday. He could take out anyone, well, arguably, as far as physical capabilities go, and he's getting pummeled by these, Mexican punks. And of course he does kill them, but like he takes a beating. And one thing that I think I loved throughout the movie is this is old Logan. Everything he does in the movie, he's old, he's like an old man. Like he's still who he was, just in an older guy's body, and he's pissed about it. He's just like a lot of bitter old men, where he's like, oh, I don't need your help. Like, no, I can do it. I'm fine. And he needs help, and he does get help, obviously, but he's old. His healing factor is not working like it used to. There's pus that comes out of the holes in his hands. He has scars that aren't healing. Even regular stuff that does heal takes a lot longer for him to heal, and hurts him a lot. And he can't even walk regularly. But he still acts like the Logan we know. This guy who's lived 200 years of just, my language, shit. He's dealt with so much. And we're going to get into that later. But, you can still see him. Like, he's there. Like, it's not like, oh, it's just this old Wolverine. It's still the Wolverine we know. And I loved that. Because he had to go through challenges he's not used to. And, he'd probably been old for a while, so he's somewhat gotten used to it. But, like, it sucks. Getting old sucks. And that's what he had to learn to deal with for the first time in, like, 200-300 years. And this is a long time. And that really, you can see it take its effect on him. Because you see him kind of, when this is made to come as a shock to everyone, he's depressed. Like, he uses his own claws to cut himself before he falls asleep. He's bitter at the world. He's constantly mad. he lets his beard grow in. He doesn't take care of himself. Even the way he dresses, you can see the conflict he has. And like at one point he's sitting on the bed and he's not looking at the tag that says Wolverine. He's looking at the Logan tag. He's looking at himself. Like, who am I? Like, it's a very emotional scene, which I think was huge as far as character development and was beautifully done. And the introduction of the adamantium bullet, which I thought as a plot device was incredible. Because at first it shows up and he's like, he was gonna shoot himself. He was at that level where he wanted to shoot himself. Like, oh my god. And he won't talk about it. He's so destroyed. And even Xavier comments later, he wants to die. Like, he's just so done with everything. Because everyone he's ever cared about has died. Everyone he's gotten close to. He had to go through in a post-apocalyptic world, and no matter what he fought as hard as he could, and stopped that from happening, just to see them all die again. Like, that must be pretty difficult to go through. And his last friend that he's had, his father figure, can barely remember anything, and he's slowly slipping away. And Logan knows he doesn't have much time left. He knows it. He puts him in a silo. He doesn't, but he can't let go. But as far as the bullet, I loved when it came back later. Because when X-23 pulls it out, she's like, asks him what it is. He says, he does admit that he wanted to shoot himself. For the first time, he lets himself be vulnerable and says, I was going to kill myself. But he also goes a bit further and says, it's to remind me of who I am. And he also, in that scene, basically told everyone what's killing him. The reason his healing factor is having so much trouble and he's essentially dying is he has adamantium poisoning. Like, the healing factor was able to stave it off for a number of years, but it's killing him. It's a foreign metal in his entire body. And to a degree, his healing factor can help him from it, but eventually it catches up with him and ultimately is killing him. And I love that as a plot device. There's another huge character in plot device, Xavier. They made his character amazing because, like, they were smart because they were like, okay, how are we going to kill off all these powerhouse X-Men? What could kill them? They could have gone down the original Old Man Logan route where something, Wolverine's mind gets controlled or something and he kills all the X-Men. But I feel like that would have been too easy and it would have been harder to explain and harder for newer fans to accept. They used Xavier. Like, in one of his big seizures, or one of his first, I don't know, the other X-Men, the big ones, were with him. And they mention at one point in the story, the Westminster incident, I'm pretty sure, where 7 mutants died and hundreds of people injured. Those 7, I'm pretty sure, were probably Cyclops, Jean Grey, because they were all saved by Days of Future Past, and maybe Hank McCoy survived, maybe some of those ones, but then the Reavers showed up because they lost. Essentially, the X-Men lost their leader. X-Men. Wolverine was probably God knows where. He always goes off on his own, or he's probably at the Institute, but he can only do so much. Xavier's essentially a vegetable. Like, he's still there, but he's not there, and he can't do that much. He can't lead. All of the big hitters are dead. They got wiped out by Xavier. And basically it just made it a lot easier for them to round up the kids or, kill the remaining X-Men. And obviously that's another huge thing that destroys Logan emotionally. And we see near the end, Xavier remembers what he did. In his last moments, he remembers he killed them. And he understands why Logan has acted the way he has and all that stuff throughout their time together as Charles' mind started to decay. And his scenes with Xavier are so good. Like, what I loved about both of them is they were old. Charles Xavier wasn't all there. They were both, they were depressed. They had all this stuff, but you could see the one, excuse me, the Xavier and Logan we knew in there. And Xavier had his moments, like the moment where they helped that family and get their horses under control was huge because it showed that Xavier's still in there. And even a lot of times when he's talking, when he either doesn't take his medicine or even when he does, he's still there. But he has to struggle with his, like the most power, like they were saying, the most powerful mind in the world dealing with a brain destroying disease, which is like they said, a dangerous mix. And Logan obviously dealing with depression and having to deal with watching essentially his father dying. Because he never really had a father until Xavier. Xavier brought him in and gave him a family. And, took care of him and gave him a place where he belonged. And just every scene he had a purpose. And you could, if you look at it, you understand why that was happening. And it made sense that it happened. With his big seizure at the casino, it was because these guys broke in the door and are pointing guns at him. Like, you freak out, if you're that old and you're prone to seizures, then that will happen. And that whole scene itself was beautifully written and beautifully done. And one thing I thought was very interesting is when Logan fought his clone, X-24. Awesome. And that made perfect sense to the storyline too, which I loved. And essentially, I felt like the symbolism in there was so strong. First and foremost, while I was watching their first fight, all I could think of was animals in the wild. The old alpha male is getting pushed out by an older male, and they just felt like animals fighting each other. And one of the things that kept him alive, obviously, was his military training and all that stuff. That was the big difference between X-24 and Wolverine. Wolverine was by no means as strong as this clone, because it was him in his prime. Like, he couldn't fight that, and he's already freaking destroyed physically. He has to deal with adamantium poisoning, his healing factor screwing up, and being old, and all that stuff. But his military training kind of gave him a little bit of an edge, and the will to keep going, because he was a person. X-24 was just pure rage personified. It was, and what I liked was it felt like Logan, aside from, the animal portion of it, it felt like Logan was fighting himself, not just literally, but metaphorically. Logan was fighting the Wolverine persona, the enraged killing machine part of him, which he cast off a while ago. You never hear him mentioned as the Wolverine by himself or any friends. He's mentioned maybe a couple times, and he's obviously referred to it a few times, but he never accepts it. He's never like, I'm the Wolverine, like he was in Origins, or stuff like that. Like, they don't say, hey, Wolverine, you know what I mean? He's Logan. He's himself. And I loved how they used his original name, James, as his cover. I thought that was smart. But it really felt like he was fighting himself. And I thought that was really interesting. And one thing I liked is they actually kept Laura's lore mostly intact. They didn't make her an outright clone, but the claws were all the same. And I loved when Xavier explained the claws. I thought that was an amazing scene, because I'm like, I didn't even know that as far as Wolverine biology goes. But I was like, wow, that's actually really interesting. Something I didn't know. And, Jesus, I'm sorry. As the fight with Wolverine and Wolverine was going on, Caliban, he went out like a boss. Like, he for most of the time, he seemed like a little bit of, pushover, and was like, like, oh, I'll do what you want. But it is even, like, inferred that by Price, I'm pretty sure that's his name, that he's buying them time. Like, he's basically leading them to where they've been, not where they are. But that way they can get enough time to get to the border. And at one point in the very beginning where he's, made to do it, he says, your mom said, beware the light, and, burned Caliban's face with the sunlight. What I loved is right when he died and he took the grenades, looked him in the eyes and said, beware the light, and dropped them. And I'm like, that was amazing. That was amazing. That's how you go out. That's how I want to go out. In a blaze of glory. And one of the greatest actually, I'm gonna wait till I get to that part, but I loved Xavier's death. And it sounds awful, but he got that one last night where he was a person again. Because before that, for a long, like he was, he was Charles Xavier for a number of years, but there was a long time where he was living in a silo. He couldn't even take care of himself, and he felt, Logan was kind of a jerk. Well, like I get rightfully so, but not really. Like he didn't have his life anymore. But that last night at that family's house, he was he was a person again. He was around people that cared about him, that cared about each other. And like he says to Logan, this is what life looks like. And he even says to the Logan clone, which he doesn't know, that it's a Logan clone, is I finally got that one night. This, the best night I've had in a long time. And he, at the same time, he remembers that he killed the X-Men. Like, he's responsible. He says I don't deserve it. Like, it hits him so hard. And it's a great, there's so much contradiction going through his head. Like, and it's such a great scene. And then when I didn't even, and the scene was written so well that you don't know that's not Logan until a few seconds, a minute or so goes by. And that's like, wait. And then it zooms in, and it's like, no. And and what they did is, it wasn't like, you're dead. He hovered his fist right above his chest, just for enough for it to sink in with the audience and Charles, and then slices him open. Or not open, but kills him. And I just think that was, that was such a good scene. But the symbolism, and one thing I thought was amazing is, essentially, Xavier and Logan died the same way. And I'm not just saying because they both were killed by X-24, but basically the way they died. Like, one thing I thought was cool was that X-24 remembered that because of Logan and that farmer, he got impaled into spikes. So he dragged Logan and threw him on a spike. And I was like, yeah. But they both, when in their final moments, they basically both looked at their children, because Xavier was a father figure to Logan, and as he fades away, he's looking at the person he's taking care of and is taking care of him. Like, they have so much history, and they're essentially father and son, more or less, just not biologically. And, obviously Logan's like, no, 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 no. And then when Logan dies, he's looking at his daughter, the next line. And, she's like, no, 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 all that. And when she changed the cross to the X, I was like, oh my God. Because I didn't even think of that. There was so much well done in this movie. Everything had a purpose. Everything you could understand. And there was so much underneath the surface that you didn't know. That, like, comic book people knew, or that you could just look at and know. Like, the scientist that made X-23 and was like, they're objects. He's the son of a scientist that Wolverine killed in the original Weapon X project. And that's an actual character in X-23's history in the comics. Like, a lot of her lore was still intact. And, like, oh my God. It hit me. Because I don't really cry in movies. Like, occasionally, like, there'll be something that'll make a little water come down. But when Charles died and Logan died, I got water. It wasn't running down my face, but there was some around my eyes, and it really hit me because I'm like, I grew up on these movies. Like, a lot of them, it's been a long time since I've seen, but, like, I've kept up with them, and Hugh Jackman has always been Wolverine. Oh my God, I hate myself. Patrick, I can't remember his name. Oh my God. I want to say Ewing, but that's not right. But Patrick has always been Charles Xavier, and this is the end. That was officially the end of the X-Men. All the X-Men are gone. They're mutants and they live on, but they're gone. And one thing I thought was interesting was they made it so everything will still make sense as far as the Marvel Universe is concerned. Because Cable is coming, obviously, it said Nathan Summers coming soon on that phone booth Deadpool went into in that little opening scene, which I thought was super funny. So well done. But it would make sense that Cable would be able to come back, because either at that time where mutants are dying or whatever, or at the time further into the future where stuff happens, like that's the perfect age, and he can come back and deal with Deadpool. Like he may be in Eden where X-23 and all them went. He may be in Eden that he may have survived, and who knows? Maybe some of the X-Men we don't survived and we didn't know about it. It was never specifically said what 7 mutants died. We can guess, but still. And one thing I would love to see is if Cable took Deadpool into the future or took someone back, adult Laura Kinney, adult X-23. How awesome would that be? Because she's a beast as a little girl. Imagine what she'd be fully grown in the comics. If you've read the comics, you know. But that would be so smart and so well done. I imagine they might be thinking of that depending on how X-23 is received. But what I loved about her, she was Logan. She was essentially absolutely 100% his daughter. Everything about her stubbornness, her ferocity, obviously the claws and all that stuff. And, you know, how she puts on this hard face, but really feels like one part of Logan's character is he has to deal with everyone he loves dies. And he has to put on a brave face, but he's torn up inside, and obviously that's shown by his depression. But one of the greatest things about Wolverine's death is he was finally able to save someone he loved. Every other person, no matter how much he fought, no matter how many people he killed, no matter what he did, they all died. Every time they died. But this time, all of the Reavers essentially are dead. The scientist is dead. Their weapon, the clone of him, is dead. And his daughter is going to a safe haven for mutants. And she can take care of himself. Like, he knows she's okay. He was finally able to save someone. And he saved all those other kids, too, that would have absolutely been either captured or killed or both. Definitely captured, but oh my god, it was. And in his final moments, like he's like, I did it. You can see it, and he's like, so this is what it feels like as he dies, because he's always been the survivor. He's never, first of all, he's never felt what death felt like, so that is true. But he's always been on the other side, watching his friends die. And this time, he has to make his daughter do it. But one thing, the best advice he could have given her, he gave her at the end: don't be what they made you to be. Don't be a weapon. Whereas his whole life, he was an animal. He was, he essentially was a weapon. Like, even before he was officially a weapon. Like, he was always a soldier. He was always this and that. And he just, he didn't even know where he belonged. And he told her what he finally understood after all those years. Don't be what they made you to be. Be your own person. Which I think is a great lesson overall. And oh my god, it was, honestly, they couldn't have done better. I honestly don't think they could have. There would have been routes that would have made certain comic book fans good, but as a movie, and even, like, there were certain things they didn't keep as far as, like, continuity, but I don't even care, because it was so well written. It's so good. And technically, they could make it so that if Cable came back, they could essentially save Wolverine somehow. Or, like, actually, if he went back in time, Wolverine's still around. So, I think they were saying, like, another actor might play him or something like that. And I think that'd be fun. That'd be cool. I wouldn't mind that too much. But I feel like this is where Wolverine's story should end. Or that, they shouldn't try to push the X-Men as far. There's other X-Men movies, so God knows. They're probably going to have Wolverine in it. It's probably going to happen. But it'll be a different actor. But which will be so bizarre. I probably won't ever accept it, no matter how good the guy is. Which trust me, they'll find someone. They'll be like, Hugh Jackman was amazing. We can't have a crappy actor now. But I'm just trying to make sure I didn't forget anything, because there were so many scenes that were so not just smartly written, but it had purpose. It made sense. There wasn't violence for the sake of violence. There wasn't sadness for the sake of sadness. There wasn't drama for the sake of drama. There wasn't even just they were doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. You could tell there was a reason behind everything. Everything had symbolism. Everything had purpose. Everything had its place in the story. And honestly, like, hats off to everyone involved in that. Hugh Jackman, it was amazing. And, like, as he died, all I could think of in my head was like, Get up. Like when he was in the, even when he's buried under rocks, I was like, come on, get up. Stick your hand out. Like, but it's over. Like we've seen him get. This is the one time he doesn't get back up. But at the same time, I wouldn't want him to go out any other way. Charles and Logan got the ending they wanted. Charles got that one last day as a person and with people he cared about. And Logan was finally able to save someone he cared about. And left the future in capable hands. And essentially saved a ton of people. And got revenge on people who killed people he cared about. So, honestly, I gotta give it a 10 out of 10. If I put it on an actual scale, I'd have to give it a 10 out of 10. Because when a movie impacts you so much, where you go out and the whole ride home, the whole time you're making a video talking about the movie, you still feel it, is incredible. It's amazing. Like, everything was as it should have been. All the characters were still themselves. Everything made sense. Everything had purpose. The symbolism was beautiful. The story made sense. It wasn't out in left field, but it wasn't, too grounded. And it was so good. Sorry, I rambled a lot there. There's probably a few moments where people are like, okay, he's rambling, let's go. But if you stick around for a little video, I appreciate it. Feel free to drop a like and let me know in the comments what you thought of the movie. I freaking loved it. And if something you noticed that I didn't, or maybe you don't think I did, and I'll let you know, oh yeah, I saw it. Or stuff you want to talk about, or stuff you disagreed with me with, or agreed with me with. Just let me know in the comments below. And see you guys in the next one. Leniman, out.